Can AI replace software engineers? People say AI's best use is coding, but we're not so sure, so we're testing it out. Hi, I'm Julia Angwin, the founder of Proof News. Thanks for watching our Proof Ingredients video series, where we talk to journalists, content creators, and experts about what goes into a great investigation. Today, we are so lucky to have with us Carl Brown. I first stumbled on his channel when he did an epic debunking of an AI program called Devon that claimed that it was the world's first AI software engineer. Devon wasn't released to the public, but the company uploaded a video that it said showed Devon completing a software task that had been posted to the website Upwork. Carl was suspicious, so he attempted to recreate the task and found that it took him just 36 minutes compared to the 6 hours that it took Devon. Carl also found that Devon was a poor coder, used an outdated programming language, and used a slower, more complicated process. This is not something I would accept in a code review from a junior developer, Brown declared in his video. His video on his channel, Internet of Bugs, got nearly 500,000 views, and since then, he has continued to hold AI claims up to scrutiny. So we thought Carl would be a perfect partner to take our AI testing software out for a spin. Carl, based in Texas, was trained as a physicist, works as a software developer, and recently started his YouTube channel. Carl, thank you for joining us on Proof News.
Thanks for having me.
First, welcome to our channel. And maybe I did a little introduction, but I'd love to hear you describe your journey to the Internet of Bugs.
So I am the father of a college freshman who joined a computer club, and first meeting, everybody in the computer club was like, oh no, found out, dad's a software developer, and was like, oh, are we still going to have jobs? Is AI going to take over everything? Kids were like completely panicked. It's like, I've been in school for 3.5 years. I'm going to graduate in 6 months. The internet is telling me that there are going to be no programmer jobs when I graduate. What's going on? Does your dad have any insight? And I said, oh, no big deal. I'll write up some stuff in a blog post. No big deal. And I was told, Dad, no one my age will ever look for, find, or read your blog. So after some back and forth, I was like, okay, I'll turn it on YouTube. I'll put up a video, and I will, have as many subscribers maybe as people in your computer club. And at least that way we'll be able to point people to it if they've got questions. And then a month later, I had several thousand subscribers, because it turns out that software engineers that talk about why it is that AI doesn't do a good job of being a software engineer is a hot topic at the moment. Who knew?
And explain to people the name Internet of Bugs. Like, what does that mean?
There's a concept called the Internet of Things, which is basically the description that that people use for all of the little connected devices in your house. So like the light bulbs that are connected to Wi-Fi, and the thermostats that are connected to the Wi-Fi, and your smartwatches and all those kinds, all of those things, your toaster, your fridge, whatever. But the Internet of Things doesn't always do a great job. And so there's a blog that's out there that's hilarious, which basically is a blog that just follows news reports and vulnerabilities about really like products like that go wrong. And it's called, I'll say, the Internet of Crap.
But right, I'm
not the word
with
crap.
This, actually. Yes.
So when I was kind of fumbling around for what it is that I wanted to call the channel, I had that in my head and was like, okay, one of the things that I tend to focus on a lot more than most software engineers or developers is the bug side, the fixing side. I've spent a lot of my career being the person that has the pager that goes off at 2:00 in the morning because somebody did something stupid. And far too many people in the industry have never had that experience and have never really faced the consequences of the mistakes that they make. So the Internet of Bugs just kind of fell together from that.
I love that analogy. I grew up in Silicon Valley, and my parents both were early software developers, and they would bring me to the lab for QA testing before shipping software, because I mean, if a 10-year-old can break it, like that's a great, it's a great
Yeah.
testing environment, right? And so I
Yep.
grew up with this idea that, you would test your software for bugs before you released it. And now we're in this world where really the whole idea is you ship it and then wait for the entire public to encounter all your bugs and report them back. This is like Facebook's whole model. Like, you're supposed to spend all your time flagging stuff for them to fix, which is like being an unpaid quality assurance engineer, right?
Right. And it's because they can get away with it. Right. I mean, we continue to use the services, and so they'll continue to not bother to test them because they don't have any consequences for shipping stuff that doesn't work right.
Which is such a great segue to our topic, which is AI. Talk about something shipped with a bunch of bugs. So, I first encountered you through your testing of Devon. And so I was wondering if I did a little bit of a recap of it, but I'd love to hear your description of like what prompted you to do the Devon test and what did you learn from it?
So the day that Devon was announced, the folks over at Cognition Labs, where Devon was created, I guess, did a great PR blitz. And they ended up on the front page of a bunch of websites, and they posted a bunch of YouTube videos. And then what happened was a whole bunch of other people, to try to get clicks or to try to get, views on YouTube, said, oh, the world's first AI software engineer exists. It's out there. That means the countdown has started. It's only a matter of time before it's going to take over all of the software engineering in all of the world. And around this time, the CEO of Stability AI, who I don't think is the CEO of them anymore, had said that in 5 years, there were going to be no human programmers anymore. And there were a lot of news outlets and a lot of, clickbaity headlines that were like, software engineering as a profession is going away. And that was the thing that really prompted these kids that go to school with my kid to be panicked about not being able to have jobs anymore. So when I started looking at these headlines almost all used this Devon announcement. They didn't actually go beneath the surface, but they looked at the headline of the Devon announcement and went, oh, Devon is doing the real work of a real software developer. So obviously it's only going to get better from here. So obviously they're all going to go away. So I went and looked at the video that most of the people were pointing to, which was a video where Devon supposedly had gone to a site where people can pay to have a software developer do a particular well-defined task. What the video description said was something to the effect of, watch Devon get paid for a side hustle of doing Upwork jobs. So I watched the video, and I've never actually done anything on Upwork, but I have done freelance work for sites before, or through sites before, and was like, that's not how it works, right? You've got to go in, you've got to have an account, you've got to sign in, you've got to submit a bid, you have to submit a proposal, you get an answer back, that kind of thing. None of that was in the video. And so then I started looking and went, okay, wait, so here's the description of what the customer wanted to have done. But this is the part that Devon was actually told to do. When the guy went to make the video, he just grabbed the first couple of sentences from the description from Devon, or from the description from Upwork, copied those and put those into Devon, and then said go. And it's like, well, no. That's the easy part of what the person wanted. What about these other 4 paragraphs of what the person wanted before they were going to pay you? So it was obvious to me just right off the bat that what the video said it did was not actually what was happening. And finally, I was like, okay, I need to go, before I put my foot in my mouth, I need to go figure out exactly what's going on. So I'm going to just do what Devon was supposed to do, and we'll just see. And the more I dug into what Devon had actually done, the more I was like, well, why would you do that? And why would you do that? And that's crazy. And so the more I dug, the more it was like, okay, somebody needs to tell somebody that there's a whole lot more to this than what it looks like if you just look at the headline of the video. And it's not something that makes me worried at all about software developers being replaced. So I did one video that was just me replicating what Devon had done the way I would do it in a lot less time than Devin did it, with a lot simpler. And then another video, which was basically talking about the other thing, which is the thing that people don't understand about software developers. Much of the job of a software developer, at least a senior software developer, is actually talking to people. If you think about it like an architect or something, you have to know what size house are we going to do, right? What features do you want? What, that kind of thing. And there's a discussion between the client and the person that's going to provide the service or the software to understand what is it that you need, what is it that you want, what's your budget. All those negotiations are things that are the place where software developers, at least those of us that have been doing it for a while, the place that we provide the most value. And AI is just completely incapable of doing those kinds of things. The demos that you see the AI software engineers doing are just, very well defined. Here's a brief, here's an actual description of the problem. Here's the environment you're supposed to be in. Here's the tool you're supposed to use. Here's the language you're supposed to use. Here's the code you're supposed to start with. And here's what I want you to get done, right? And getting to the point from a customer says, or a boss says, or a product manager says, okay, here are 2 sentences about what this thing to do, and then breaking that down into a whole bunch of tasks and what all needs to get done, and what your success criteria is going to be, and what your budget is going to be, and how big a team you're going to need, and all that kind of stuff. Breaking all of those things down is where the real work is, and the AIs can't do any of that.
Right. So it's reassuring, right? So humans still need to be involved in scoping out these tasks. I think there's an interesting question. So in your video was very popular, right? It went sort of viral, I guess. Is that right?
It wasn't, 20 million views like I understand some of the, the viral Mr. Beast videos get, but it was way more than anything else that I'd seen in my niche.
So after your video went viral, I was one of the people who saw it, and I reached out to you and said, I'm really interested in collaborating with you because I've been doing AI testing. We built a software tool that lets you basically test the 5 leading models. ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Meta's Llama, Mixtral, and Anthropic's Claude. And you put in one prompt and see answers from all 5. And so the idea is to see how do they perform widely, because we use AI as a term for just one thing, but it's actually many products.
Well, the other thing is we use the term AI because those companies use the word AI to describe the product they have now. Unfortunately, that term AI has baggage that goes back to the Terminator movies and the Matrix movies and the, Forbidden Planet from the 50s, that kind of thing, Star Trek. When the average person hears AI, they think what they've seen in the movies, when in fact, when we talk about what AI is doing in the current environment, it's a small fraction, if even that, of what you see in the movies. Yeah,
totally. Given the state of the AI that we're playing with today, I definitely would not want it to drive a car for me or, shoot a gun or any of the things that is happening in the Terminator. So tell me, we're really excited at Proof News about this idea of testing hypotheses and how that's sort of what how we can determine a little bit of the truth, right? The truth is always going to be iterative and bigger than just one hypothesis. But I want to know, what kind of hypothesis did you want to test with the software? What did you go in? What was the question you went in asking?
The thing that's interesting to me at the moment is the limits of, and the kind of the outlines of what parts of the things that a software developer does, what parts of the things that these kids that are about to graduate from college with software engineering degrees, what parts of what they can do can the AI actually do? And what things is it reasonable to expect a fresh out of school programmer to be able to do that the AI just has no clue about? So that was the hypothesis of basically, I don't think it's going to be able to do, and sure enough, from what I found, it hasn't been able to do what a kid getting fresh out of school with a computer science degree can do.
How did you design your questions, and how many questions did you ask the AI models?
I've done, I don't know, maybe a dozen-ish. And they're in a couple of different categories. Part of the issue is For this series, I'm trying to stay in the realm of things that non-programmers can understand. I have heard secondhand about a lot of very panicked parents who have spent tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars on the educations of their kids that are about to graduate with a computer science degree and have no idea if the kid's going to be able to get a job, right? And those parents are not often parents that would understand things if I showed them a bunch of code. So for this series, I've primarily been trying to do things that don't require you to be able to interpret and understand a lot of code. And the number of things that I found that way are probably 3 or so different categories of things.
And so what are the 3 categories that you have?
One of them is things that are often done, but something recently has changed, right? So the thing about computer science or computer engineering is things change all the time, right? Computers get faster, new languages get created, new techniques get created, new versions of the old software come out, that kind of thing. So one of the things that I've discovered is that when you ask the AIs to do a thing for you, and that is a thing that has been done for 10, 15 years. But in the last couple of years, the way that that thing is supposed to be done has changed. What the AI seems to be doing, and I don't want to say I'm getting inside its head because it doesn't have one, but what seems to be happening is that the preponderance of the ways that the AI has seen this done in its training data is always on the side of the way it used to happen. Right. And it's just incapable of, even if you try to prompt it, it's often just incapable of doing things the new way.
Right. Probably because there's so much data from the older time that it's heavier in some way, right, than the data more recently.
So the way I think about it, and in fact, we don't really understand exactly how the inside of a neural network works at any level of detail. But the way I think of it is basically like, imagine you've got a deck of cards. And each card in the deck of cards is one example from the training set of the AI that's the starting point for when it's going to try to answer your question. And so when you say, hey, do X for me, it picks up a deck of cards that's basically all the things that are related to X, and it shuffles it and it flips one off the top. And that's where it starts down the path of trying to solve your question, right? And if that deck of cards is, think of it as like, 98 out of 100 cards are all the old way to do it, and 2 of the cards are the new way to do it, chances are you can ask over and over and over again and still never get the new answer.
This is sort of why, right, we always see these problems with racism, sexism, exactly, right? Because they are so embedded in our history. And so we see AIs really struggling because they continue to replicate these biases. I'm imagining it's a very similar deck of cards situation. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that was category 1.
That was 1. Category 2 is when you've got a thing that's, it's a thing where there's more than one way to do it, and you have to decide for the criteria which of the 2 to do, right? So here's an example. Imagine if those of you that took algebra at some point have this idea, hopefully, of a thing called a prime number, which is a number that can be divided only by itself and 1. Figuring out whether a number is prime, you basically go through and go, is it divisible by this? Is it divisible by this? Is it divisible by this? And there are a little bit of optimizations you can make, but that's kind of the general idea, the way that you learned how to determine if something is a prime in algebra in high school. However, cryptography, which is modern way that we make communication safe, and we make programs where people on the internet just can't read your credit card number. Cryptography relies on really big prime numbers, like 30-digit, 40-digit, 50-digit long prime numbers. And there are ways, there are algorithms, there are well-known computer science papers that have been published that talk about the way to factor, the way to figure out whether really big numbers are prime. And the way that you learned in algebra about how to figure out if a number is prime, that way will theoretically work on a 50-digit number, but it will take something like 25 years to give you an answer, right? And some of these new methods that the cryptographers have figured out are ways that can do it in a couple of minutes on a modern computer, right? when you ask an AI, or when I've asked the AIs with using this tool, give me an algorithm, write code for me to create to tell me whether a number is prime, they give me the high school algebra version, right? And I say, okay, now same question, except this time I'm going to give you a 37-digit number. And it says, oh, that's a really big number. And then it gives me the same answer. Because so much of the cards in its deck of cards are people that explain how to figure out if a number is prime, doing it the high school algebra way. And so few, if any, are examples from the data set that are doing it the cryptography way, that it, even when you tell it, I want you to do it a certain way, when it deals that deck of cards, it's like, okay, here's the way from high school algebra.
Quickly, let's do the third because we are running low on time. So
the third category of things that it can't do are the kinds of things that I was telling you about earlier, which were the planning tasks, that kind of thing. So I've got a thing where basically it's like, okay, design a mobile app for me. Cool. Now do that part. And when you start drilling down, it's like, okay, you're going to have to go hire a team for this. I'm done. One of them said something like, I think it was ChatGPT said, I'm not intended to actually solve the problem for you. I'm just here to be an advisor to you. I'm not intended to do it. I got one that was funny. I asked it to flip through pictures, right? And then I ask it to create, so it's like, okay, here's a directory full of pictures. Let me slide through the pictures, right? How long will that take? It's like, okay, that'll take like 6 months and $50,000 to make. Said, okay, now I want you to replicate TikTok. I want to be able to post. I want to be able to create my own videos. I want to be able to have an algorithm that correctly determines for a user which videos are their most, the ones that they want to watch, all that kind of stuff. Explain to me what it's going to take to do that. Oh, it's going to take about 6 months and $50,000.
Wow. So basically any task will take 6 months and $50,000.
Basically, yes. I'm not sure exactly what would be simpler than here are 10 pictures, swipe between them. That's like a really, really simple version.
What was your overall impression having looked at all of these and with your hypothesis about whether it's going to take our programming jobs? Sounds like we're maybe in the clear for a little while.
For the foreseeable future. There's no path really that I have seen any evidence of toward a more general kind of understanding. Now, the companies are constantly saying, oh, just wait till next year. Oh, just wait till next year. Except there's a history of AI companies saying, oh, look how great this is going to be next year for, 7, 8, 9 years now. I saw a quote the other day from like Elon Musk that said that a Tesla was going to drive between LA and New York without any kind of human intervention by 2019 or something like that. So it's possible that maybe one of these days we're going to get AI that's actually going to live up to some of these promises, but I haven't seen any evidence of it.
Well, that is reassuring. And I want to say though, that there's always limitations to the findings, which is essentially, you ran a dozen tests. You've been doing tests in addition to using our tool. You've been testing AI across your work. What are the main doubts you have about your finding?
So the main doubt that I have is that by the time this video gets published, there will probably be a new version of at least one of the AI tools, right? I mean, so the pace at which companies are releasing new things is just hard to keep up with. The second thing, I guess, is a variant of the first thing, which is, it might be the case at some point, right? If you had asked me 5 or 10 years ago if AI would be capable of doing the kinds of things in code that it's doing right now, I would have been skeptical. Fundamentally, there are a lot of us that have to make decisions. We have to make career decisions. We have to make education decisions. We have to decide what to major in. We can't just say, okay, we're just going to put our lives on hold until we find out for sure 5 years from now whether or not these promises are true.
And in the meantime, I feel like you're giving some hope to a bunch of students who invested a lot of money in their educations in programming. So that I think you should be proud of, and my children are amongst those who are. So I really personally appreciate it. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for using our testing tool and giving some hope to all those CS students out there.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
me.